Welcome back to our channel. Today we're diving into a story that is filled with horror, thrill, and mystery. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. In 1991, Sheriff Alan Pangborn looks for Henry Deaver, an abandoned youngster, in the freezing forests close to Castle Rock. Pangborn surprisingly discovers Henry alive and well on a lake that's frozen lake, unhurt, regardless of the cold weather, after he has been missing for 11 days. The event is still unsolved because it is unclear how Henry lives. On what ought to be his last day before the jail is sold in 2018, veteran Shawshank State Penitentiary Warden Dale Lacey makes breakfast for his blind wife. He travels to a cliff above Castle Lake and commits suicide rather than reporting to work. His passing corresponds with the visit of Teresa Porter, the new warden, who plans to open up the long-closed Block F wing in order to increase prison revenues. Guards discover a secret cage holding an unknown, quiet prisoner while examining Block F. Although there is no proof of his incarceration, evidence points to years of detention. The man eventually says one word in response to his name: Henry Deaver. Henry, currently a grown-up employed as a criminal defense lawyer in Texas, witnesses a failed death penalty that renders him devastated. Shawshank calls him right away to let him know he has a possible client. After being dragged back to Castle Rock, Henry must face his history, which includes his disturbed mother, Ruth, and Sheriff Alan Pangborn, who now resides with her. Strange things start to happen as Henry gets back in. Surveillance footage seems to show the enigmatic prisoner moving freely throughout the prison, accompanied by guards who show up dead. However, the evidence seems to disappear as if nothing had ever happened. Following his passing, a letter composed by Dale Lacey comes to light, implying remorse and an ulterior motive he felt he was meant to pursue. Officer Dennis Zalowski at Shawshank looks into rumors that the enigmatic prisoner fled, but he doesn't discover any tangible proof. The reality is revealed through recollections. Lacey built an underground prison in secret, believing that by keeping the inmate bound, he was doing the will of God. After meeting Lacey's wife and delving further into the man's life, Henry discovers a troubling fixation with a single biblical scripture that appears frequently in Lacey's works. He also finds out that Lacey frequently misses church and spends hours at a time lost in the forest. Pangborn warns Warden Porter that this inmate must never be freed as concerns grow. Porter attempts to anger the prisoner by putting him in a jail cell with a dangerous inmate. Staff members are concerned when the prisoner quickly develops serious cancer and passes away after little contact. In the meantime, Henry gets back in touch with Jackie Torrance, who describes how Castle Rock made his abduction as a boy into a local legend, frequently blaming him for his father's demise. Henry uses a prison outreach initiative to covertly set up contact with the inmate. When they eventually cross paths, the prisoner's queries show a disturbing level of personal information about Henry's life. Elsewhere, Dale Lacey's chopped skull, which was never found after his suicide, has been discovered buried in the forest after it is picked up by a dog. Flashbacks demonstrate Molly Strand's early attachment to Henry and her being there in the months following his father's disappearance. Molly is currently experiencing intense psychological and physical disruptions, including noticing voices and recollections connected to Henry that she is unable to ignore. The prisoner at Shawshank observes the world around him in silence, disturbing other prisoners without speaking much. While Molly falls further and is eventually detained following an unsuccessful attempt to procure medicines that can inhibit her disease, Henry keeps looking into Dale Lacey's link to the prisoner. Molly acknowledges that she can sense the feelings of others strongly, with Henry being particularly overwhelming after Henry saves her. Molly suddenly discloses her knowledge of the hidden prisoner at Shawshank during a local history presentation, bringing the reality to the public's attention. Warden Porter bargains with Henry as a result of the expose. When Henry eventually has a private conversation with the prisoner again, the guy echoes words that Henry's father had said just before he passed away, adding to the mystery and fear that surround him. Henry looks into his own abduction and approaches Pangborn about the truth. Reverend Deaver scrawled, "Henry did it before he passed away," and Pangborn acknowledges that he had long thought Henry might be to blame for his father's demise. Pangborn maintains that he saved Henry and decided not to seek out the truth further because of this perception. Henry investigates the Desjardins property at Castle Lake as the source of his disappearance, but he is once more unsuccessful. Tensions erupt at Shawshank as he gets ready to flee Castle Rock. Finally, under duress, Zalowski opens fire in a bid to reveal the dishonesty within the institution. Zalowski is killed during an aggressive rescue as the scene descends into chaos. Flashbacks indicate that Henry has been suffering from unidentified noises in his ears throughout his youth. The feeling reappears and intensifies in Castle Rock. Ruth's state of mind worsens, her recollection and sense of time becoming disorganized as her past and the present blend together. The prisoner, now known as the Kid, gets back into Henry's care following Zalewski's passing. Subtle disruptions surround the Kid everywhere he goes, turning love into abrupt aggression. Molly is persuaded that this individual is contaminating the village because she senses a strong, almost tangible feeling of injustice emanating from him. Ruth gets lost at a Pangborn ritual and leaps from a bridge, but she makes it out alive. Afterwards, Pangborn watches video surveillance and discovers the Kid inside Ruth's house. When he meets him in the forest, he remembers halting Dale Lacey years before and finding the identical young man imprisoned in Lacey's trunk. The Kid says he may aid Ruth, but denies being the devil when Pangborn questions him. As the noise in his ears gets worse, Henry goes to his father's burial. From a distance, he sees two odd individuals observing. The Kid's actions within the house get more unsettling as he stays in Henry's childhood bed, watches old home films of Henry, and dresses like Matthew Deaver. Henry sends him to Juniper Hill Asylum because he is so troubled. Wendell, Henry's son, is enthusiastic, inquisitive, and has plenty of queries regarding the adoption and family background when he comes from Boston. Ruth describes how she anchors herself among the past and the present by leaving pieces of chess about the house in order to clarify her shattered perception of time. Henry approaches Molly Strand in an attempt to find truths. She eventually acknowledges that she turned off Matthew Deaver's oxygen supply years ago, saying that Henry's animosity led her to do it. Henry bursts away after refusing to accept her admission. Alan Pangborn finds Dale Lacey's wrecked automobile and takes it back at gunpoint because he believes the Kid might have the secret to rescuing Ruth. Henry, meanwhile, goes into the forest and meets Willie and Odin Branch. The idea of schisma, overlapping worlds that show up as Henry's ears buzzing constantly, is explained by Odin. He takes Henry to the Filter, an insulated space intended to separate from the voice of God. Henry has a terrible collapse once he's in because he can hear his dad talking everywhere around him. Alan finds his residence looted when he returns home. After escaping Juniper Hill after a fire, the Kid approaches Alan and accuses him of abandoning him in that trunk so many years ago. Ruth Deaver relives recollections of her marriage to Matthew Deaver, her love affair with Alan Pangborn, and parenting Henry out of chronological order. She claims that the pieces of chess she leaves about her house act as anchors to help her stay grounded. She remembers how she prepared to leave Matthew after believing he was planning violence, as well as his increasing fixation with hearing God's words and his conviction that eternity awaited him. In the present, Ruth starts to believe that the Kid is her returned husband and that she may heal her broken psyche by murdering him. As the Kid tries to sedate her, Ruth strikes back, stabbing him and running as time fractures around her. She struggles through changing situations, afraid and disoriented. She grabs a gun and shakes as someone approaches the shed and opens fire, thinking she has killed Alan. Alan looks unharmed, answering claims of being shot. Ruth clutches him, weeping, and begs him not to go. A flashback shows Gordon and Lilith buying Dale Lacey's previous home and converting it into a bloody bed and breakfast. During repairs, they discover dozens of frightening drawings of the Kid. Gordon becomes infatuated with the pictures, which motivates him to kill their first visitors. Molly frees Henry from a filter and discovers Odin Branch dead outside. Henry retracts for rejecting her previous apology. Back at the Deaver residence, Henry discovers Alan deceased in the basement and questions the Kid, who says Ruth murdered Alan and cleaned it up to protect her. The Kid claims he saved Henry years ago and waited for him to hear the sound. Meanwhile, Wendell begins to hear the sound after a bird hits his bus. Henry analyzes the B&B, and the dated drawings show that the Kid has not matured. A deadly clash ensues, culminating in Jackie Torrance shooting Gordon to defend Henry. Molly meets the Kid at her parents' house, where he shows intimate details of her past and calmly informs her that she perished in the forest, making her disturbed and frightened. The Kid then tells Molly his tale, which is shown as an alternate chronology. In the present moment, he is Henry Deaver, a physician with a lovely marriage and a secure future. When Matthew Deaver begins to discern God's voice, reality fragments, and the two Henrys are transported between universes. Matthew locks away the boy, thinking him to be a demonic being, and thus begins another round of torment. Years later, Henry flees from his confinement, only to be apprehended by Dale Lacey and held at Shawshank. Molly witnesses his recollections personally and begins to trust him. In the present, Wendell abandons his bus and heads back toward Castle Rock. Henry searches the B&B cellar and narrowly escapes another deadly confrontation. Molly protects the Kid, now persuaded that he is sharing the truth. A flock of birds assaults Henry's car, causing it to crash. Molly hears more from the Kid and sets up an assembly at Harmony Hill Cemetery. Ruth remains on the bridge, considering suicide, but Molly intervenes with the insights she gained from the Kid. Henry is jailed by the authorities, while Molly assists Wendell in fleeing the town. town. Warden Porter approaches Molly, sure that the kid is an evil person, but she passes away minutes later in a tragic bus crash. At the graveyard, the kid is apprehended. When the prisoners in the police station become aggressive, panic ensues, enabling the kid and Henry to flee into the forest. There, Henry recalls the fact that he shoved his father over the edge to save Ruth. He manipulates the kid and imprisons him below Shawshank, preferring containment over conviction. A year later, Henry stays peacefully, taking care of Ruth until she dies. He continues to feed the kid secretly. As Henry exits the basin, the kid smiles into the darkness, thereby leaving his actual character unanswered. After that, a wounded woman, Annie Wilkes, runs through the woods dragging a cardboard box. She approaches a river, places the box aside when something inside awakens, and falls to her knees. Annie gets ready for her first day as a part-time nurse by systematically taking her medicine before going to work. She takes antipsychotic drugs from the hospital's medicinal supply room. Outside, her daughter Joy is waiting in their SUV. Annie informs her that they're going to the laughing place, a word Joy is definitely familiar with. As they travel across the country, Annie takes medications, alters license plates, and refuses to stay any place for long. Joy grew up endlessly on the road, seeing other teenagers with quiet jealousy as they traverse towns they never intend to call home. Stopping for fuel one night, Annie gently convinces a man to remove pictures that he took of Joy, revealing both her anxiety and her disturbing power over events. Not long later, Annie runs out of medicines, loses focus, and wrecks her automobile near Castle Rock, Maine. 1 week later, local mafia lord John Ace Merrill comes to light as he gathers money for protection from Somali shopkeepers. Ace and his uncle Pop Merrill are at odds over his techniques. Ace dislikes the increasing Somali commerce community, particularly Abdi Hawalwadaag, who is building a new retail center on grounds that are said to be cursed. Annie and Joy move to the Stargazer Lodge Motel. Annie cautions Joy about avoiding Ace, even with his seeming generosity following the accident. Joy becomes concerned about Annie's lack of medicine and her increasingly erratic conduct, but Annie swears Castle Rock is hazardous and only for a while, vowing she will leave soon. Annie secures a nurse position at the hospital using a fictitious name. She continually arranges and restructures routines, becoming agitated when she is refused access to medications. She soon comes to have repeated visions of a tall man covered in blood, which she associates with her violent past. Joy meets neighborhood teenagers Chance, Vera, and Timothy, gaining the independence that Annie denied her. Annie responds angrily, saying that the place will corrode Joy. Later, she checks her own name on the internet and sees that the FBI issued an arrest warrant for her murder. Annie, filled with withdrawal and anxiety, barges into Dr. Nadia Halwadag's home and steals a keycard. While Annie is inside, Ace ignites the house to scare Abdi, but she escapes unnoticed. The next day, Annie arrives at the pharmacy but is greeted by Nadia. She confesses she needs the drug to be right for Joy. Nadia, who moved illegally, administers the medications and provides assistance. That night, Ace approaches Annie at the hotel, stating that he thinks she's concealing something and threatens Joy. Annie mercilessly kills him with an ice cream scoop and dumps his corpse at the mall building site. However, the earth crumbles beneath her, trapping her in a mysterious underground room as insects race upward. Annie wakes underneath the ground next to Ace's body, discovering she had fallen into a massive old burial site filled with tombs and etched symbols. Wounded but resolute, she endures difficult passages and ascends an inclined stairway to the deserted Marsten House. She walks into the sunlight, terrified and confused. Back at the motel, Annie looks desperately for the jewelry she dropped in the sinkhole, believing it is valuable. She advises that they abandon Castle Rock right now, but Joy isolates herself, scared of her mother's deteriorating mental health. Meanwhile, Pop Merrill is undergoing chemo as tension between his illicit business and the Somali community escalates. Abdi armed himself, expecting retribution for Ace's disappearance. Annie lied to Pop, claiming Abdi threatened Ace, deflecting attention from herself. Joy was brought to a medical facility after slashing her hand. While Nadia tends to her, Joy shares disturbing details regarding Annie's home health care and their continual mobility. Annie, who is waiting close by, remembers murdering Ace and gets medicine to calm herself down. Flashbacks explain Pop's experience in Somalia and his choice to take in Abdi and Nadia, in stark contrast with Ace's lifetime bitterness and feeling of exile. In the present, Hassan is assigned to clear occupants from the Marsten House, but he is murdered inside, increasing the town's fear of otherworldly dangers. Following that, Pop questions Abdi, suspecting him of Ace's death. Abdi refuses responsibility, accusing Pop of dishonesty and revealing the cracks in their created family. The fight crushes Pop, who collapses, thereby leaving the dispute unanswered. Meanwhile, Joy discreetly uses a new phone to investigate Annie's identification, revealing unsettling anomalies. Annie becomes distraught when she finds Joy has breached her rules. As mosquitoes overrun the motel premises, Annie turns to see Ace standing outside her vehicle, alive, quiet, quiet and watching, implying that something evil was following her up underneath the earth. Annie flees to her cottage after noticing Ace loitering at her SUV. When she glances again, he has disappeared, leaving her wondering whether she had hallucinated him. Inside, she closes the door and descends into fear, thinking Ace remains out there and is pursuing them. Elsewhere, Abdi flees captivity as Pop collapses. He seals Pop's dog, Bobby, in a lift, before driving the comatose Pop to the medical facility, sparing his life in spite of their disagreement. Pop wakes in a hospital after a small stroke and feels confused and guilty, fearing he has wounded Abdi by actions he cannot recall. Nadia attempts to contact her brother, realizing the whole thing close to her is unraveling. Returning to the motor lodge, Chance invites Joy to go with a group of teenagers, scouring Castle Lake for Ace's corpse. Joy has a great sense of liberty with Annie on the trip, including yelling, consuming marijuana-laced food, and diving into the water to rescue an abandoned oar. Joy finally feels normal. Meanwhile, Annie phones Nadia about her having visions and expresses concern that the new drug is wrong. Nadia pushes Annie to step in, but her condition worsens. Joy arrives to find the home wrecked and Annie dissociated. Annie reveals she murdered Ace when he attacked them and claims he has returned, begging Joy to trust her. Joy pretended to believe Annie's tale and sedated her, binding her to the bed. Taking charge, Joy redefines emergencies as times when Annie perceives issues that aren't there. Annie quietly spits up the tablets while remaining conscious. On the other hand, Ace seems to be alive and well in the Marsten house. Valerie Blount, a property salesperson, leads him to evaluate the house. Inside, Valerie discovers Officer Anderson has changed into something horrible. Ace kills Valerie, demonstrating that he is more than just a human. Annie's dread is heightened when she believes Ace has killed Joy. Later, Joy approaches Annie, demanding the truth about things. Annie ultimately says Joy's dad rejected her, that she stole Joy and fled, and that she is willing to do awful things for her daughter. Joy discovers mice that were killed by Annie's unused medicines and learns Annie lied yet again. When Nadia comes to the door, Joy pushes her away, believing she will fix it herself. Annie breaks free strongly, bruising her arm and shoulder, but Joy leaves. Alone, Annie meets the tall man, who informs her that the story concludes with Annie killing Joy. In a flashback from Mogadishu in 1993, young Abdi and Nadia are caught up in a state of civil war as their mother, Khalifo, tries to send them to America for protection. When U.S. troops approach, Khalifo is accidentally shot and killed while carrying Abdi's weapon. The incident shatters their young lives. Abdi embraces his wrath and pledges vengeance, while Nadia is badly traumatized, influencing the courses they will take. If you're enjoying this recap so far, please hit like and subscribe for more. In the present, Ace travels easily through Castle Rock, bypassing Joy at the bus stop and softly reintegrating himself into the community. Nadia, burdened by Pop's poor well-being and the stress of recent incidents, helps at church. Reverend Appleton notices Joy gently, understanding her vulnerability and desire for direction. Joy declines to return to the Wilkes house and rather chooses to remain with Nadia, believing she is able to fix Annie on herself. Chance takes Joy's possessions from the cottage and witnesses personally the unstable and dangerous Annie has grown to be, reaffirming Joy's resolve to remain apart. Annie meets Nadia at the Somali storage facility, wanting her daughter to return. Nadia disagrees, stating that Joy came scared and wounded and requires care. Undeterred, Annie subsequently visits Nadia's house, but Abdi catches her at gunpoint and compels her to go away. Joy observes the dispute from above, then makes a strategic decision just to stay where she is, shutting off communication with her mother. Meanwhile, Ace orchestrates events beneath the curtain. He talks with Billy and Lance, while Pop seems to be preparing for his own funeral at the Mellow Tiger. As the crowd grows, conflict breaks out as Hassan drives over Timothy with his car, Valerie kills the bar owner, and Officer Anderson chokes Councilwoman Pinto. Ace explains what he sees to Chris, describing Jerusalem's lot as hallowed ground that has never been surrendered. He creates a dark fellowship and attacks Chris during an argument in the church. Reverend Appleton takes Chris off by confessing his devotion to Ace. Elsewhere, Nadia discovers Pop's closed army records and discovers the hidden fact that Pop was liable for Khalifo's murder in a clandestine mission in Somalia. When she confronts him, it grows evident that his choice to take her and Abdi in was motivated by remorse, not compassion. The news breaks Nadia. She insults Pop and storms away, breaking the link that she previously thought constituted their family. With that, Castle Rock is crumbling into planned, increasing disorder, fueled by Ace's rebirth and the town's buried misdeeds finally being exposed. At the same time, Annie and Joy stay deeply split, each believing that isolation, control, and loss are acts of love, even as their ideologies lead them closer to disaster. In a flashback, Annie appears as a young girl with an intellectual disability who faces abuse in school. When Annie creates sentences out loud, her classmates giggle, and afterwards on the school bus, she strikes out angrily. Her parents, Carl and Crisilda Wilkes, have been called. The teacher offers customized instruction, but Carl rejects political correctness and rejects Annie's treatment, while Crisilda deems the the institution crooked and unfriendly. Annie spent her days alone, observing the other children playing from afar. Carl sets up a real school for Annie in the attic, educating her through tales rather than books. He alters Burr Rabbit by asserting that the laughing place is where one thinks it is. He exposes Annie to his incomplete manuscript, The Ravening Angel, and she becomes his typewriter and #1 fan. Annie suffers with the labor but complies, finding meaning in supporting her father's work. Meanwhile, Chrysilda becomes more frigid and authoritarian, obsessed with hygiene, order, and social status, while openly disparaging Carl's writings and insufficient work. Afterwards, Rita Green is hired as an instructor to assist Annie with her GED preparation. Annie's intellect and individuality are fostered by Rita's compassionate treatment of her. Annie shares her belief that tales should have consequences. Those who commit wrongdoing have to pay. Rita speculates that Annie might create a narrative of her very own in the future. Carl becomes more acquainted with Rita after she compliments him on the quality of his work, but Chrysilda sees Rita as another threat. As Annie's literacy gets better, Carl tells her that an editor has an interest in his manuscript and is getting ready to leave the house, calling himself a searcher. Annie is distraught, but she holds on to his assurance that all will be fine shortly. Chrysilda, meanwhile, becomes even more hopeless. Chrysilda takes Annie for a trip when she gets admitted to university, talks secretly about rotting and predictability, and then purposefully crashes their vehicle into a river. Chrysilda does not survive, but Annie does. After the funeral, Carl comes back saying he is back for the long haul. Annie mentally retreats and separates herself from the family. Rita arrives with her baby daughter, Angeline, a while later. Annie discovers Angeline is Carl's daughter after he discloses that he and Rita are dating. Annie, overcome by abandonment, makes a fleeting knife scare on Carl before running away. Annie is forced back into her loft when Rita and Angeline move home. Carl refuses to give Annie medicine once more because he wants to keep her real self intact. Annie becomes more and more estranged. Annie becomes enraged when Carl dedicates The Ravening Angel to Rita, his new laughing place. She approaches Carl that evening, pushing him over the stairs and unintentionally crushing him on shattered wood. Rita finds the corpse and runs away after Carl dies, while telling her it's okay. After stabbing Rita in her stomach, Annie kidnaps Angeline and runs off into the forest. Annie almost murders the infant by the water, but Angeline stops her with a chuckle. Annie chooses life by holding onto the child. In the present, Joy finishes The Ravening Angel and observes the dedicatory note. Fearful, Rita wakes from her slumber. Ace goes to a bar with Annie. Joy locates Rita and gives her a call to ask questions about the book. Elsewhere, Rita, currently 4 years clean, addresses at an AA meeting in New York. She describes how she rebuilt her life away from Castle Rock after escaping Annie's assault 15 years prior. Desperate to locate the girl she left behind, Rita follows the contact information to a nearby motel after getting Joy's call. After just escaping Rita's view, Annie discovers her safe is gone. Meanwhile, Joy is put in a group home under Nadia's watch in the interim. As Nadia's connection to Abdi breaks down due of pop-related concealment, her private life also starts to fall apart. As Ace supervises hideous changes in the sewers below the town, building a vessel for Amity Lambert's return, the mysterious assaults resume over Castle Rock. Rita is dismissed when she attempts to revive Joy's kidnapping file with the FBI. She crashes and starts drinking again, feeling disappointed and angry. In a letter to Joy, Annie admits that Joy saved her life, not the other way around. When Nadia finds a patient with 2 types of blood at the healthcare facility, medical alarm escalates, proving that a phenomenon profoundly strange has taken root across Castle Rock. In private, Joy consents to seeing Annie in the forest. Annie acknowledges that Rita is Joy's real mother, that Carl had been killed, and that Annie was thinking about killing Joy but was unable to carry out the plan. Joy informs Annie that she must permanently vanish. Without her, Annie cannot survive. Joy and Chance head out, intending to escape. In the woods, Rita approaches Annie while holding a gun. Annie flees, and the two fight ferociously until Joy steps in and puts Rita to sleep. The gun goes off amid the chaos, aggravating Rita's previous wound. A few minutes later, cops show up. Raising her hands, Annie makes a fake confession, deciding to give her life to keep Joy safe. In a flashback to New Jerusalem in 1619, the settlement decays. Insects gather, animals perish in the muck, and people walk helplessly. When Amity Lambert goes back to the house where she grew up, Marius, her father, smashes the door in her face. Père Augustin encourages his audience to embrace hardship as a challenge from God in his sermon on fortitude. Amity publicly attacks him, claiming that although this community conforms to a conceited man attempting to safeguard his wealth, the Bible says people are called by God. She exhorts those present to depart for the rich country and threatens that Jerusalem's lot is cursed. However, Amity breaks down in terrible seizures before she can finish. She is declared possessed by Marius. Following that, Amity is held captive as the governing body discusses what happens to her. Augustin contends that she is sick rather than possessed, while others charge her of having sex with locals and creating unsettling drawings. Marius shows Augustin an affection affectionate note in which Amity accuses the religious leader of having an affair with a witch. They are both expelled and punished. The townspeople haul Augustin prisoner despite his pleas for Amity's fate. Amity and Augustin fight for their survival in the forest after having been expelled together. While Amity is unable to go hunting, Augustin develops an illness. Amity finds a figure with a hood lurking on an edge overlooking the water, as she is by herself in the dark woods. A strange light emanates from his face when he removes his cowl. In the present, Ace Merrill, possessed by Augustin, works on sketches of Amity and the brilliant figure as the converted renovation of the Marsten House. Castle Rock's 400th anniversary festivities are getting ready. Deputy Clay interrogates Annie, questioning the drugs in Rita's presence while casting suspicion on her admission. Annie claims to have worked solely and pretends to shield Joy. Before bringing them both into police custody, Clay reunites the mother and daughter. To speak with his brother-in-law John, who is incarcerated for the murder of Pop's sister, Pop travels to Shawshank Prison. Pop finds out that Ace bribes a guard to enter Henry Deaver's deserted cell after John discloses that Ace just visited Block F. After driving to the Marsten House, he greets Ace, who talks implicitly about the future and revelation. Pop feels the impending catastrophe. 1619 continues. Believing to have encountered an angel, Amity goes to the village. The environment starts to recover, and food is plentiful, plants thrive, and animals recuperate. The locals bow down to her in reverence as she dispenses supplies. Marius rushes out after denouncing occult practices, but the populace turns against him. Amity observes the burning alive of Marius and his supporters. The angel is demanding more. The people are informed by Amity that religion necessitates an unimaginable deed. Parents are told that their children are going to rise in new bodies centuries after they are offered one by one. Under Jerusalem's lot, the entire settlement is buried. Augustin believes Amity will come back in 400 years, so he murders her last and seals her casket. In the present, at the anniversary procession, the angel figure is revealed. The locals grow intrigued. Pop discovers the threat too late. The audience remains motionless in front of the angel's visage as Ace declares a fresh start for Castle Rock. Deputy Clay, who identifies to be one of the converted, takes Annie and Joy to the Marsten House. Ace greets them and offers refuge. Annie discovers that duplicates have taken the place of her psychotropic drugs. As they catch an image of the angel, the enthralled locals throughout town walk through Castle Rock, lured into the parade. Inside the house, Joy becomes uncomfortable with Ace's friendly manner as Annie battles increasingly severe delusions. Valerie displays paintings by Ace Joy that bear a striking resemblance to Amity's old emblems. Ace recognizes that Joy might be Amity's actual vessel rather than Annie. He closes the passageways and turns his attention back to Joy. Nadia throws Chris off and calms him, so the effort to convert her is unsuccessful. Phone services and electricity go down shortly afterwards. As the converted rampage in an abandoned facility, slaughtering those who survived, Nadia and Chris shelter there. Chris fights to hold on for sufficient time to alert Nadia about their impending arrival. When Annie enters the basement, she discovers lines of corpses covered in dense, sticky ooze. Ace focuses on Joy above ground, subtly transferring the burden and persuading her that she bears the responsibility for Rita's murder. Joy is apprehended by Hassan and taken into the Marsten House as the procession approaches. In order to get to her daughter, Annie kills Heather and Hassan by arming herself and forcing her way over the converted. A mother and daughter get back together. Annie decides to flee, despite seeing visions of Chrysilda pleading with her to cleanse Joy. Together, they creep out of the property, avoiding eye contact with the angel as they navigate through roads crowded with frozen, stunned villagers. At the hospital, Nadia and Chris clash back. While Chris dies from his wounds and confesses his emotions before passing away, Nadia murders two converted. Outside the Marsten House, everyone starts to move around. Joy and Annie are ripped apart. As Joy is drawn back towards the angel and voluntarily enters the growing crowd of people as the enchantment grips them more tightly, Deputy Clay grabs Annie. The angel has acquired complete power over Castle Rock. Pop Merrill is the only one who refuses while the enthralled locals stand still, staring at the bronze figure. He escapes to his emporium, where he finds an illustration of the kid, the angel, that confirms his darkest suspicions and obtains Alan Pangborn's writings from Dale Lacey. Ace discovers through her recollections that Martha Lacey previously held the angel under Shawshank after Clay kills her, enabling her to be converted. At the hospital, Nadia mourns for Chris as Pop shows up. When the converted pursue Pop, Nadia, and Chance into the streets, chaos ensues. After a firefight, they flee to the emporium, where Abdi meets them. Pop explains that the occupants of Jerusalem's lot were buried and waited generations to come back, therefore they never really disappeared. He prepares for a siege by setting up makeshift explosives inside the emporium. Jamal, Evelyn, and Annie Wilkes push the way inside in search of safety. Joy has been abducted by the converted, Annie says. Jamal swears to have been spared, but minor details, such as his mended ear, indicate that he is possessed. Nadia kills Jamal after he betrays Pop, and Haldol momentarily makes him normal again. He announces that Amity is coming back after midnight before disappearing. Ace gets in touch with Pop and makes makes an arrangement to give over Lacey's letters in return for the lives of the others. Pop quickly discovers that Ace wants Pop and not his letters. Ace taunts Pop over his previous brutality and shortcomings by revealing his real identity as Augustine. Pop won't compromise. Pop gives the command for everyone else to go toward the railroad tracks as the converted assault the Emporium, but he and Abdi remain to repel them. Pop puts on bombs with the intention of destroying Ace's ship and administers himself with Haldol to avoid possession. Just as Pop approaches Ace by himself, everyone else flees. Pop attempts to set off the charges, but the trigger doesn't work. A train roars by, obstructing the chase, and Ace guns him down. When Nadia cries out to Pop on the radio, he doesn't answer. As the converted get ready for Amity's rebirth, Ace takes Pop's body and interments it under the Marsten House. Joy is ready as the selected vessel, clad in white. Ace declares that Castle Rock will be the starting point of a world resurrected under Amity and the Angel. To break the spell, Nadia, Abdi, Chance, and Annie plan a last-ditch effort to take down the Angel statue. While Nadia spearheads a raid through the underground passageways, Abdi retrieves bombs. Desperate to save Joy, Annie and Chance make their way to the Marsten House. Pop is resurrected as a converted and wakes in his tomb, but he still has some agency because of Haldol and the information he learned from Lacey's writings. He exposes the reality that the Angel moves among worlds and that Castle Lake is a dimension portal. Without realizing that Pop is delaying, Ace thinks Pop has agreed to his destiny. Chance is photographed as dusk draws in. As Annie is pulled in front of Ace, she witnesses Pop's survival. To kill Nadia and Abdi, Ace dispatches Pop and converted soldiers into the underground. Rather, Pop betrays them, assisting Nadia in escaping and giving her instructions to set off the bombs after Chance is set free. The Angel statue's spell is broken when bombs explode underneath it. The residents awake in bewilderment as bugs flood out of the rubble. When Joy stabs Ace with a blade, chaos breaks out. Pop decides to stay with the last explosive, claiming he earned it, and binds himself in Chance's stead. Nadia sets off the final explosion. The converted in the Marsten House are killed when it is destroyed. The Angel disappears from the edge, its grip on Castle Rock broken. Annie and Joy leave the town a few days afterwards. At first, they appear secure as they study together, travel to Canada, and start over. Joy becomes more self-reliant, while Annie gets employment as a caretaker. However, Annie's delusions reappear, this time with Chrysilda's sound telling her to make Joy clean. When Annie discovers that Joy plans to free herself, anxiety overtakes her. Annie poisons Joy with Haldol-laced ice cream and assaults her because she believes Amity is still within Joy. Annie chases after Joy as she runs to the lake, nearly drowning her before discovering the reality too late. Annie justifies Joy's survival as an accident. Mother and daughter go to a Paul Sheldon reading in the final moments. Joy exudes freedom, imagination, and optimism. With an unsettlingly devoted smile, Annie sits next to her in a vacant seat. The cycle continues. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments for more interesting videos like this.